Right, it is the 25th of November, so we're pretty close to winter time. Probably the worst time you could imagine to buy a new palm, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it, it was a lot bigger than I was expecting. So this is the new Parajubaea Torellii. My plan had been to keep it potted and put it in the summer house, so forget about it for the winter and plant it in the spring. Would have been ideal, but yeah, it's too big and too heavy, so that's not gonna happen. So plan B is going straight in the ground. Not ideal, but when you've got a pot as large as that, there's a lot of weight involved just with the soil alone, not just the palm itself. So this is where it's going, obviously. So if you a long time viewer, this actually used to be a hot tub enclosure, then transformed into a sitting area just for a table and chairs, and now it's going to be a small sitting area. So we've halved it, and so half is going to be the raised bed. So I have dug about 6 inches down into the soil, into the ground level, and the rest is going to be raised, so it's going to be raised about a foot. Let's address some concerns. So I did put out a sort of teaser video, if you like, about the palm, and it's easy to say that, oh, it's looking a bit sparse on top. Well, it is. That's because this has been UK grown for at least a couple of years, so it's seen UK winters, and we all know what last winter was, and it did take damage. But as we can see, this is a new frond this year, and as I'm getting behind, there's another one emerging as well, so there is growth there. So the fact is, it's not a damaged palm. It's not going to die on me because of that. Massive trunk. If I were to buy a small Parajubaea, which is very hard to get hold of anyway, I'd be waiting a lifetime to get a trunk that big. The foliage, yes, may take a couple of years to get back to its fullest and looking good, but 2 years versus a lifetime of, to get a trunk that size, I know I'd rather take my chances. And again, because this has been UK grown, or at least for a couple of years, I know it's not freshly imported from Spain or some hotter country where it's going to struggle for our winters. So that was the main concern. And also, with any plant, when you move it, transplant it, dig it up, whatever, you're always going to damage the roots. So you're going to lose some roots, so you need to lose foliage anyway to balance that out. So that goes with any plant, but especially palms or anything. If you're moving a palm, transplanting it from one place to another, you would remove an appropriate amount of foliage to match the root loss. So we don't want a huge amount of foliage where it's going to struggle to keep that foliage alive. I'd rather keep the foliage it has got looking good, matching the root system, if you get the gist of what I'm saying. So that is my thoughts on that. And like I say, this was a very heavy palm. There's no way you could lift it. I had to sort of shuffle out the pot and roll it along the garden. So there was root damage, there was some breakages, but again, due to the low foliage content compared to the root mass, that should keep the foliage it's got at least. and I'm not expecting miracles here. This is, you know, just hopefully next year we'll get a frond or two, and they're going to be smaller while it recovers and builds a root system. So I say it could be 2 or 3 years before this is looking its best, but 2 or 3 years, like I say, versus a lifetime of waiting for something in a trunk of this size, I think it's a good trade-off. So what am I going to do to protect this? Because yes, it sustained damage last year. It was potted. This is going to be in the ground this year for winter, and we are now approaching winter, albeit it's a beautiful sunny day today. And yeah, I'll just address the cold blast we're having at the moment. Well, we're not having it here on the Suffolk coast. It's very pleasant out here. It's at least 12 degrees, but actually I've got a thermometer on the palm itself, just out of interest. I don't know if that's picking up. So it has got up to 28 degrees on the trunk. That's not air temperature, I know. This is a sun trap in this particular spot, which is why I decided to plant it here. So even in the winter, if I feel that trunk, that's lovely and warm. So again, microclimate, good place to, you know, this is going to get full sun, summer and winter. So that's going to give it its best chances. So there's a couple of plans of attack I'm going to do to get it through winter. Like I say, not ideal to be planting a palm this time of year, but I had no other option. So we've got, and because I weren't expecting to plant it in the ground, I haven't got a load of soil. So the stuff I dug out, I've sort of put around the root ball, and just as a temporary measure I've put bubble wrap around it. So I didn't know how cool we were going to get. Obviously we got to about 4 degrees last night, so nowhere near a frost. But the concern is, I think midweek, so about 4 or 5 days time, we could get down to about 1 degree, so we could get a frost. So yeah, as a temporary measure, I'm just bubble wrapped around the root ball and the exposed soil there, and I will work on topping that up as soon as I can. I've ordered some heat cable from Amazon, so that's going to be, it's got an automatic thermostat on it, so that comes on at 4 degrees and turns itself off at 10 degrees. So that's sort of a self-regulating one. It's not a particularly cheap one, but I'm not going to be wrapping it around the trunk. I'm going to be wrapping it around the root ball, because I want the roots to stay a bit warmer, because the soil is wet, and you know, with a few broken roots, I really don't want, you know, them dying back too much. So I try and keep the soil warm. So also with that slight warmer temperature, obviously heat's going to radiate up a bit, so I will be fleecing this on anything sort of below 2 degrees, and obviously that heat from the soil will rise up through the fleece layer, and you know, just keep the trunk and the foliage looking good. So I've got a big fleece bag which I'll put over, and it's got a zip on the front so I can unzip it during the day and then just zip it up at night. So that's the plan for that. And if need be, if we looking to get a really cold patch, and I will go further. Another reason why I planted it here, I wanted a more tender palm here, if you like. Let's say it's a perfect microclimate here. It does get all sun during the winter, where a lot of the garden is in shade. It's because there's already a structure around it, so it'd be quite easy for me to build some clear walls around if I needed to, and put a bit of a roof on it. So that's another thought. So I may well try some other more tender palms either side of it, some couple of smaller ones, maybe some of the Livingstones or Phoenix Robellini, something like that, but that'll be for another video. The point is, my hand was forced, I had to plant it. Again, not an ideal time of year, but you know, we do what we have to do. I wouldn't necessarily have chosen to buy a palm this time of year. Well, I suppose it was my choice at the end of the day, but I'd rather have it in my winter care where I know I can give it the best care I can, rather than sit somewhere where, I'm not saying people don't care about it, but maybe not get as much attention if there's multiple plants. You know, if I can just concentrate my attention on this one plant, I think it's got a better chance, rather than sort of buy it in spring where perhaps it's got more winter damage on it. So yeah, not concerned at all about the lack of foliage compared to trunk. Like I say, there is new growth from this year, so it's alive and kicking. It's going to take a few years to bounce back and look perfect, but no, I'm very happy with it. I was you know, between the buyer, so I sort of bought it through Facebook Marketplace, and very good communication. The guy sent me several videos, so I was under no illusion that these palms are not in full perfect condition. I know that, and you know, I'm very happy with the price I paid for this size. I mean, like anything, I'm sure this is not looking as big on this video as it is in real life, and I'll try and give you an estimation. It's going to be at least 10 11 foot to the top of the fronds, and like I say, it is raised up a little bit, so we're talking 6 foot of trunk, but because it's a foot raised, it's 5 foot of trunk, but it is a chunky trunk. So I will, if I get a ruler across that, so yeah, it is just about 2 foot across, and yeah, so not ideal time, horrible time of year to have to plant a palm, but again, this is something I've been looking for all year since I lost my smaller Parajubaea over the last winter. And so I could have, and I was aware of this seller at the beginning of the year, and I could have bought one then, or bought this plant sort of beginning the spring, but I was fully aware that, you know, that the bad winter that would have taken damage, and I left it all summer to make sure that we got some new growth on it. So yeah, so there's just my thoughts on that. So for any people who did sort of message me saying they're a bit concerned, yeah, I mean, I can see the palm in real life, I can see it's alive, I can see there's new growth, so I'm not concerned in that state. The more concerning thing for me was the root breakage, which was inevitable when we've got something of this size trying to manoeuvre it about. So yeah, so as it is, lovely sunny day, I'm out here, I'm just finishing up with this raised area. And I will say, any raised areas I do make, I do put insulation foam all around. This is because effectively, I mean, you could say it's like growing a plant in a pot. You know, the raised bed will cool down a little bit quicker maybe in winter. It does warm up obviously on days like this a bit faster than the ground would, so it sort of swings and roundabouts. But at least on the really cold days, dreary days when there's no sun and the soil is losing heat, that layer of insulation, so we've got basically 2 layers, so that's an inch, so we've got 2 inches of insulation there, that'll go all the way around just to stop the penetrating frosts. I mean, that's on top of obviously the wooden build. so that's not going to get penetrating frost in that sense. So that's what I always do, and also obviously that helps a barrier between the wood and the soil, so your wood lasts a lot longer as well. So yeah, I do that with every raised bed I do. So yeah, keeping the roots that little bit warmer, a little bit more protection from the severe cold if we get it. So that is about it really. So that the plans are, we'll get the heat cable, we'll get several coils of that around the base and fill up some soil on top of that. It is waterproof, the heat cable, and it can't overheat. It's got a switch off, so it's not going to burn anything. It's just going to keep it between 4 and 10 degrees. So again, that will keep the soil around it, and we'll put some more soil on top, and I probably still will put a good mulching, or maybe, yeah, probably a good wood mulching that probably would absorb the heat radiant up from the soil, and again help heat the trunk maybe a little bit on a small day, just to stop not heat it, but just to stop the frost collecting on it. So I don't really know much more I can add to that, so feel free to ask me any questions about it. I mean, like I say, I understand people's concern, but I mean, I think I've explained. We've got a plane going over there. I think I've explained sort of my reasoning why I brought this palm at this time of year, so I'm happy for it to be in my care and for me to give it my full attention. And like I say, if it does die, then it's on me, not on the seller. I was well aware of what I was purchasing, and like I say, I'm at this point I'm very happy with the purchase. It's not ever going to be a cheap purchase, something of this size. And you would think, oh well, if I'm spending a lot of money, I want a good quality palm. Well, in my eyes, this is a good quality palm. The trunk says a lot. There's a good root system on it, a lot healthy, good roots. And like I say, this is in recovery from last winter. So if you know I survived a couple of UK winters, especially last winter, you know you've got a good chance to keep this alive long term. Right, so we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.